Sleeping 16 hours a day isn't normal. Having to eat 3,000 calories a day, not moving your body literally at all, and you're still losing weight is not normal. Hello and welcome to another video. Today I want to talk to you guys about how it felt after the surgery, what kind of happened, all sorts of things. So let's get started. If you are new here and you have no idea what's going on or my backstory, I will leave a playlist in the description box below. Go watch those videos. It gives you a lot of information as to what cancer I was diagnosed with, when I had my surgeries, all of that information. What did life look like right after getting home from the hospital? Well, honestly, it looked like I was very heavily medicated on the couch 24/7. Things they don't tell you about having a surgery like that are you have to go home and you have to give yourself blood thinner shots, and they have to go into your belly and they're very painful. My belly was just bruised from having to take those shots, and I think I had to take them for a couple of weeks. I couldn't really take care of myself for at least the first 6 to 8 weeks. I needed help getting showered. I needed help getting dressed. I needed help getting meals made for me. I couldn't even make my own meals. Because I was limited to using a walker, I could not even go make myself a bowl of cereal and carry it back to the couch. Somebody had to do that for me. So a lot of it was being taken care of by other people. I had in-home occupational therapy and physical therapy twice a week, both of them. They came to my house until I was able to actually leave my home and go to a physical therapy clinic. I was eating, and this will probably surprise you, I'm not very large. At the time I was like 5'4" and 130-ish pounds. I was eating close to 3,000 calories a day, and I lost over 10 pounds during that time from not only a muscle loss standpoint because I was not active, but because my body needed so many calories to heal. I was constantly sleeping. I probably slept 16 hours a day for the first 2 months, and I was eating like crazy. Like, I couldn't eat enough. I couldn't keep the weight on my body. I want to say I have a genetic thing where I metabolize medications differently than the average population, so I actually burn through medication faster than other folks, and it's not as potent. So when I take the dose that I'm supposed to, it's not as effective and it doesn't last as long. Now, this is important to this story because I was heavily medicated for a long time for pain management control. I have a high sensitivity to pain, meaning I experience a lot more pain than some other folks do. Regardless, I still had my femur sawed in half, right? It's so hard to describe, but I'll try to describe the different types of pain to you. I experienced 3 types of pain: nerve pain, muscle pain, and bone pain. Muscle pain, I think everyone has probably experienced feeling like they strained a muscle, right? So there's the feeling of almost like a muscle strain because my muscles are having to work very differently in order to compensate for the lack of use of the leg, right? So even as I learned how to walk, I still get muscle pains in different parts of my body because I'm adjusting for my limb not working the right way. Bone pain just feels like the most immense pressure you can imagine. Imagine you have an elephant just constantly standing on your femur. That's what it feels like. Nerve pain is like electrical lightning bolt, like super intense pins and needles burning sensation. During the time where I couldn't do anything right after the hospital, I was just in so much pain that I was constantly medicated and I really couldn't do anything. Functioning was difficult. Even trying to open a coloring book and color was a struggle. Didn't even have the mental capacity to turn on a Netflix show, so I basically only watched the Create channel from PBS here in the US. I couldn't even really pay attention to what was going on in that, let alone trying to pick a specific show to watch. A lot of it's just a huge haze. It was very, very, very difficult to leave the house because I constantly had to have my walker and I couldn't put any weight. So imagining basically mostly just using your arms to help you walk around, it's exhausting. It was honestly pretty lonely. I had some visitors, and I'm really grateful for those visitors who did came. It gave me something, but it felt kind of embarrassing, to be honest. I was a very independent person before I was diagnosed with cancer. I was very proud, and sometimes honestly too proud, that I could handle things by myself, and that I felt almost embarrassed at what state I was in because I was a complete wreck, to be quite honest. I couldn't do anything for myself. There's nothing more humbling than having someone else help you shower because you can't do it by yourself. I used my walker for a long time. I was completely zero weight bearing on the leg for I think 8 to 12 weeks or something like that. It was a long time. And then I progressively started learning how to put just little bits of weight on the leg at a time over a span of a couple of weeks until I got to full weight bearing. Okay, okay. Oh, this is the one that my fault. Nelly, dogs! No! Compounding factor! No! Okay, walking. Okay. So I had to relearn how to walk. It took a lot of energy to heal from it. And it wasn't just physical energy. At the same time, I'm trying to understand why it happened and what was going to be the future and what was my life going to look like? What would my mobility be like? I don't know what was harder, honestly, the physical or the emotional. Going from a completely abled body to being disabled and not understanding what the lifelong consequences are because so little people in the world have what I have was hard. It's still hard to this day. I constantly think about it because I'm constantly in pain. I'm constantly dealing with the consequences of the surgery. Don't get me wrong, the surgery saved my life, but there's a lot of complications that come along with that. I eventually had to go back to work because I just ran out of time, and my work had this policy that basically meant that I couldn't use leave sharing from other people, even though I still needed to be on leave. At that point, I had already burned through my whole leave bank, and I wasn't being paid anymore. And I needed to contribute to household expenses. And having cancer surgeries is extremely expensive, even with insurance. And I didn't honestly do that well. Following that, it took me a long time. I didn't even start. So I had my surgery in January, and the first time I drove a car, it was like July or August of that year. So I didn't drive a car for over 6 months. I actually had to sell my car at the time because I had a manual. I learned and I drove a stick shift as my first car, and it just wasn't working out anymore for me, especially with how low the car was. Getting in and out of the car was extremely painful. Getting out of the car, honestly, to this day is still very painful for me, and it probably will be for the rest of my life, but it helps having a vehicle that is seated higher up, so I had to trade in my little sedan for a small mid-size SUV. I continued dealing with the scar tissues issues, which made it very painful to walk because my kneecap, when I was walking, instead of the knee grooving like this, like it was supposed to, the kneecap in the artificial joint, it was going like this, and it was dislocating as I was walking constantly. It got to the point where I completely dislocated it in October of 2019. I was sitting down to go to the bathroom, and I started screaming because it was so painful. A piece of scar tissue had dislodged the kneecap completely, and I had to force it back in. So I went to the doctor, and the scar tissue, they decided, okay, we're going to do another surgery. A couple of days before Thanksgiving. Yeah, a couple of days before Thanksgiving. They went in November of 2019, and they opened up a 6-inch incision line. They took out scar tissue. From the original surgery, they kept my original kneecap intact, didn't change it at all. In order to help keep my knee tracking in the appropriate spot, they went in and put this thing called a button on the back of my kneecap. So they shaved down my kneecap, and then they installed this button on the back of it. So that way it would force it to groove a lot nicer in the space, and it wouldn't allow scar tissue to develop in that space. So I wouldn't have nearly as many dislocations when walking. because I couldn't walk basically far at all or do much because I was constantly dislocating my kneecap. I burned through my leave bank again. I think I was off for another 6 to 8 weeks to try to heal from that surgery because it was a 6-inch incision line this time. And it was a night and day difference. I thought that I was going to live a miserable, miserable life. It was the worst pain I can ever experience. It was so mentally hard on me because I couldn't really do much because it was constantly dislocating. It was so painful. It helped a lot. They took out all the scar tissue. I started healing, and then after being isolated again because had a lot of surgery again, the pandemic started, and I had to deal with the pandemic. In a weird way, the pandemic has given me a second chance at life. So I am still having issues with scar tissue. After that, I just started noticing it's like a clunking. You can literally hear it when I walk. I have many clunks when I walk because of scar tissue. They were like, just keep going, let it go as long as you can. I started finally feeling better. With the pandemic, I started working from home. I had a job where I was grateful enough that I didn't lose my job and I could work from home. And so I started working from home all the time, and that gave me so much more energy to just live my normal everyday life, do things like cooking, taking the dogs for a walk, being able to make it through the grocery store. It gave me that energy back. Instead of having to put all that energy into commuting and sitting in an uncomfortable office space and all that jazz, I could be comfortable in my own home and save that energy to do other tasks in my life. I started noticing issues again in the fall of 2020. And my knee basically, quote, like relapsed with scar tissue. It just came back almost worse. It was a little less painful because they had that button installed, but it was bad enough that it was affecting my ability to walk again. So they did laparoscopy, where they just cut 2 little incision lines, again, 1 week before Thanksgiving. 1 week before Thanksgiving. They went in and they took out scar tissue, and they just said there's so much of it that they could only get so much, and that they think that for some reason I have something where my body produces too much scar tissue when it shouldn't be. That's kind of where it's left off. It still affects my mobility today. The scar tissue is an issue. It's extremely painful. Moving certain positions, if the scar tissue and the button are stuck in a certain position, I have to break it in order to move from a certain location. My knee still has swelling inside of it because of the constant irritation from the scar tissue fighting the kneecap and the artificial joint in that area. I was lucky that I retained a couple of really great friends in that process. I had a friend at work who was so kind, and she took me to physical therapy often. Like, she went out of her way to help me go to PT after work because I couldn't drive, remember? And even when I started learning how to drive again, some days I still couldn't do it by myself, and she would still offer to take me. I had so much support from some people, like my husband, my friend, my sister. I'm forever grateful for those people. I will never be able to thank those people enough for the kindness that they showed me during one of my weakest times. So thanks. If you're watching this video, thank you so much. You deserve everything and more. I didn't mean to cry. I'm so sorry. If you want to see a lot of the products I used, I have a video up above, and I'll leave also in the description box below of all of the things that I used during surgery. But I want to thank you guys so much for watching. If you are interested in watching more of my videos, please hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell. I don't post on a schedule, but I do post regularly. If you identify with anything what I said today, whether you're a carer or you're somebody yourself who's dealt with something like this, please hit the like button and leave a comment down below as to your story. I'd love to hear it. As always, thanks so much for watching. Until next time, take care. Bye.
Yeah, all I need are some better days. Cause all I want, and I pray, I believe in the better days.